Hello, hello.
Hello.
How you doing today?
I'm much better now since I've been trying to log on. I was able to connect tonight.
Awesome. We've been having some issues and I have no idea where they're coming from. We have a therapist that I've been wanting to have on these Zooms since we started. And for whatever reason, she has the same link, but it won't let her get into it for whatever reason. I don't know what's going on.
When I used the code, when after I printed it off, and it said that the host has ended the meeting, so then I went back to my email and I clicked on without the code. Then I was able to launch in. I'm like, not again.
Mm,
If you're telling the story, 10, and you're telling the
I don't
story,
know.
really in the way that Ms. Alford was just
We're gonna
talking
give it a
about,
few more minutes for some others to
what it
pile
was like
in.
in Tulsa, and then what were the events that drove
And hopefully
things to
everyone
happen
can
in late
get
May,
in
early
here.
June of 1921. Talk about, I'll have you go first, Mrs. Nelson.
Yes, it
Why
is recording.
tell the story of Tulsa in that way?
All right, I see Teresa added herself, so I think we're good. Let me try to get something to cleanse my screen.
Tell the story of 1921, where 1920 of the search for bodies and to try to figure out a way to go back and forth in time. And that was a really foundation. So,
Oh, this is pretty good.
okay, yeah, and Mr. Williams? Yeah, to just build off of what Stanley has shared, the attempting, I think it was his system, showing what happened in 1921, 1920, prior to it, and what is going to be today, to acknowledge that the past does inform the present, and
The
that the
better.
present, in terms of its efforts of being reconciled, is in many ways reflecting upon to reconcile the past. So they're intertwined. But equally, the search for mass
Oh
graves,
man.
as one of the activists says, Christy Williams, at the end when coffins have been found, it's sort of the proof
Gonna give it about
that
2 to 3 more minutes
even though there are photographs, even though there
while we
are
get in here.
publications by descendants, this is sort of the real evidence, sort of inescapable, that atrocities were committed. You don't want to believe the photographs, despite how astonishing. So I think that that's really the ebb and flow, give and take between past and present. In the film, you do a terrific job of setting up how is it that black people got to Oklahoma in the first place, why they went there, what drove them there, and then like what were the seeds of their success. One of them being oddly because of segregation and not being able to do business, conduct business with whites, Black Wall Street and the Greenwood section and that part of Tulsa just became this economic powerhouse. As you do a great job of laying out and talking about how that came to be, how those people got there, how they were able to build their businesses, and how they were able to be successful. And Ms. Alford, I'm coming to you on this because I want you to talk about I believe it's your great grandfather,
My grandfather
your grandfather.
and grandmother and my great uncle.
Talk about them because I believe it was the Nail Brothers shoe shop and record shop.
Yes, it was.
Talk about
The Nail family basically came from Texas by covered wagon shortly before statehood because of a promise that many have heard that there was a better life in Oklahoma and that there was an opportunity for you to be successful and to raise your families. And so many people, just like my
All
family,
right,
migrated
8:05.
for a better life.
We're gonna get right into it.
My grandparents,
Hopefully,
James and Sebastian Nell Sr., along with my great uncle,
no
were
one
the
else is
proud owners of
experiencing
the Nels Refugee
issues
Shop
with
and Rental Shop
signing
that is
in,
located at
but
121 North
if they
Lincoln Avenue.
are,
They were also the first
let me
owners
pull
of
up
what is
these
now
emails
Liberty
really
Park,
quick.
where the Nels Dance Pavilion and Skating Rink was located. They also operated a limousine and taxi service. So they were very entrepreneurial minded people, as many were
Where's the
at
food?
that
Buddy, you
time.
didn't give me no
They were
food. You ate
proud of
fish.
the
You said
my
I'm
great
supposed to get
uncle
full. Why
was
my
a very
stomach hurt
proud
again?
college education and he basically worked hard along with my great uncle and our family members to start our business to be successful. They were able to
You want to go
employ
get a
that
burrito? You
business
want to
and
go get
community
some?
members.
I like burrito,
And
gordita,
he
tortitas.
was all that.
Oops.
All right, I got the email pulled up just in case we have anybody that has troubles with logging in. But we're going to go ahead and dive into our topic today, and which is the gut and the microbiota, the biome within the gut. And I am super, super, super excited to discuss this with you all today. And I'm going to try to keep it as brief as I possibly can so it doesn't get boring and all of that goodness. But here we are. Let me click that button right there. Ain't that it? Yeah, there we go. All right, today we're going to talk about what I call the second and third brain. And we're going to really tie this into how what you eat definitely does affect the body, the microbiome within the gut, and so much more. All right, what is the gut? Okay, the gut is the gastrointestinal tract. Intestinal tract. It starts at the mouth and ends at the anus. Does anybody know how long the gut is, or the whole GI tract is? Nope. Okay, it's about 30 feet. It's about 30 feet long. Anybody knows how long a foot is? Okay, we know how long the GI tract is. And that tract is full of, or is responsible for so many different things. There's a multitude of processes that goes on within the GI tract. Everything, of course, starts with how we actually chew and break down our food. The better we chew and break down our food, the easier that our body has. And furthering or continuing that breakdown process into the nutrients that our body actually needs. Do you guys see this the Zoom thing in front of the PowerPoint, or do you just see the PowerPoint?
I
Yeah,
just see
mine
the
is.
PowerPoint.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, I just want to make sure this wasn't in y'all's way like it was in mine. All right. So the stomach, this practically just breaks down how the digestive process takes place. You know, food goes from our mouth down to the stomach and down to the intestines through the duodenum, right here. This is the place or the valve in the sense to where the food actually exits the stomach and gets into the intestines. The beautiful thing about the entire GI tract for me is that it is lined, and I mean lined with different things that scientists call plexuses that actually are responsible for a lot of the communication, the chemical communication within our body. The four layers of the stomach or the GI tract, in essence, are the mucosa, which is the innermost layer, the submucosa, which of course comes on top of that layer, the muscularis layer, and then the last layer being the serous layer. Within the actual submucosal layer and the muscularis layer actually reside the plexuses that are defined as the hosts of where the different neurochemicals, neurotransmitters that are actually located within the gut. So when you think about the first brain, saying that, or most Westerners believing that the first brain was this brain, The body also shows us that we have a completely different brain that actually processes things, breaks things down just as the brain does, and communicates with other aspects of our body. The neurochemicals that the gut utilizes are the exact same neurochemicals that the brain utilizes, and the communication between the gut and the brain happens via the vagus nerve, and which is a part of the enteric nervous system. If I am losing anybody, or if anything that I'm saying is not making sense, if you have any questions, please ask, because I really want you guys to get this. So within our gut, within itself, lies a layer or two layers of within our tract that are responsible for the communication that takes place between the gut and the actual brain. The interesting thing that science is now trying to say that they are validating is that some of the communication that happens between or from the gut actually does penetrate the blood barrier within the brain, meaning that the gut and the bacteria within your gut has the ability to alter the way you think, alter the way that you feel, alter the way that you perceive the environment around you. That is huge because, again, when a lot of us say that it's the parasites and the bacteria within your body that causes a lot of the behavior that we just note to whenever we talk about how food affects us mentally. This is exactly where that's coming from. I think a lot of us feel like the things that we say are kind of out there. They're just so far fetched they can't be true. But science validates and proves a lot of it to be true. And within itself, understanding the microbiome within the gut and what all it is responsible for is super, super important. Because without understanding what all it's responsible for, there's no way for you to understand what all it's doing in the event that the biome within your gut is not healthy. I kind of summarized a bit. Let me see if that's him or if that's. I kind of summarized a bit in regards to just that gut and brain connection again. So I won't be speaking on this for 2 hours. But again, the actual nervous system that the gut communicates with the brain happens through the enteric nervous system, the ENS system. And you guys feel free to look this up in your free time. And again, because of this nervous system is considered as the second brain to some, but actually the first brain to others. There's a lot of similarities between the gut and the brain. If you actually look at the makeup of it, it doesn't look too different. You know, one is just a bit more compact than the other, and I found that to be interesting, just in regards to how responsible or how dependent the body is on the brain. So, you know, it's the same thing when it comes to the gut. And that's the reason as to why you really want to tackle the gut. You cannot heal your body from anything unless you tackle the stomach. And that's just point blank, period. This again breaks down the difference, or more so the breakdown of the communication between the gut bacteria and the brain. So you have the gut bacteria here within the lumen aspect of the tummy, and then you actually have the barrier between the lining of the actual intestinal walls. Of course, there's a mucosa or mucus-like agent on top of this entrance or these entries right here that actually trap in bacteria and things like that, as Netta discussed earlier. But what happens is some of the gut microbiota, some of the bacteria, the bite process of them actually seep through these things. They seep through these barriers, and they are actually traveling up the vagus nerve and affecting the way that the brain operates. Which is really interesting because a lot of people don't understand how the way that they eat affects the way that they feel, affects the way that they perceive. It's a common vegan joke that vegans are a bit more peaceful than people that tend to eat a lot of meat.
Right.
There are approximately tenfold more cells in the gut than there is within our entire body, meaning that you have more bacteria within your gut than you have in your entire body. There's a different, how can I say this? Different environments within the guts are actually associated with different diseases and disorders. People with Alzheimer's may have a lack of a certain bacteria than people with diabetes or people even struggling with obesity. The gut within itself, the microbiota within the gut itself actually has the potential to control our genes. And I wonder how many of you knew that. How many of you knew that the foods that you eat have the ability to control your genetic expression?
No idea.
Is serious. When we talk about holistic healing and we go to a cellular level, we have to understand that everything is interconnected. So where science or who is it? Where science or modern science teaches that there are some things that we just don't know about. There are some things that we don't understand. When you really dive into more of these smaller things, you definitely will see where they do interconnect. And I'm going to attempt to really break that down for you guys really briefly and hopefully in a way that you retain the most, because it's our deepest belief that it's the knowledge that's going to hold you to a better walk. You know, it's one thing to say, yeah, I'm going to do better. But when you don't know what better is, why better is better than what it is, it's kind of hard to stick to it. And so we really try to provide you guys with that knowledge that'll hold you to it, making it harder for you to fall off of this once you realize what you're really doing to self. And I see one or two kind of just joined in the middle of, so I'm gonna summarize really quick. What we're talking about is the different brains within the body, and I call them the different brains because they actually do the same thing that the brain does. They communicate via the same neurochemicals that the brain utilizes, thus enhancing and really making communication between different aspects of the body and the brain possible. This presentation really does break down the enteric nervous system, the microbiota within the gut, and how the microbiota or the biome of the gut, the host of bacteria within the gut actually affect our body. Your gut is your largest immune organ, nothing else. A lot of people, when they want to get better, they don't understand why tackling the gut is one of the most important as well. Beyond cleaning it, this is where nearly all of your immune fighting agents and enzymes really exist. And so damaging this organ where those things do exist do have the ability to alter how your body fights off different bacteria and viruses. And beyond that, even how it regulates. The bacteria within your gut control not just the enzymes and stuff like that the stomach produces in order to aid in digestion, but it also regulates how can I say it, the different chemical markers within our body that would actually predicate different disorders and diseases such as diabetes, gout, and things of that nature. And one of the things that we are doing constantly that a lot of us are not paying attention to or not considering when we're talking about the gut is the DNA that we're consuming. How many of you knew that you were eating DNA every time you eat?
How is that?
Right.
Okay. Nobody knew?
No, explain, please.
Okay.
Because I want to know.
Okay. So here's what happens. Let's just to finish this off. Different foods actually affect the microbiota within the gut in a different way. So the foods that are associated with the bacteria or the excessive growth in bacteria that is not good for the body are typically your cheeses, pizzas, meats, and things of that nature. And I'm about to explain why and answer that question in a minute. But some of the best foods for gut health, foods that actually promote probiotic kind of effects on the gut, things that actually help the good bacteria within the body develop and grow and kind of regulate itself, or fruits, vegetables, your beans, some fermented foods, polyphenols in which you get from your plants and things of that nature, fiber-rich foods, what you're consuming right now, fruits, and foods with inulin, garlic, onions, jicama, chicory roots, different diets will encourage you to swap out certain foods. Like those on a strictly alkaline diet are not going to do the garlic, and they're not going to do the onions. They may do shallots or something different that contains that same thing, but it's not what they would consider to be an acidic food. So depending on what your goals are in regards to your health and what you're trying to do with your health is what you're, is what foods you're going to really gravitate to. Same thing here, worst foods for gut health, processed foods, in which most of our foods are processed, unfortunately. Even when we do get our beans and things like that from the store, a lot of them are already, we buy them where they're already made in a can. Same thing in regards to fast foods, French fries and things of that nature, which can be a weakness of mine when I'm being lazy or I'm too busy. But red meat, dairy, alcohol, sugar, soy, gluten, eggs, artificial sweeteners, farmed fish, in which is the fish that makes up a lot of the fish market out here, and GMO foods. All right, now we're talking about eating DNA, dietary DNA and its effect on genetic expression. So there is mRNA within the foods that we eat. It's called dietary DNA. So what happens is the cells within the foods that we eat contain nucleic acid. And if we understand anything about microbiology, each cell is almost like a little city on its own, and which is a really, really magnificent thing. I saw a quote that practically said that if you wanted to enter into the size of a cell, or if you wanted to enter a cell, it would be one of the most horrendous experiences, because cells are actually really big, even though they're on an extremely small level, like, in regards to how we view them. And the polarity within it and just how these cells work is absolutely phenomenal. But the nucleus within these cells actually hosts some of the DNA or the RNA, mRNA, that is used in order to create certain proteins within the body. And we consume that. That is in every cell and everything that you consume. So that's exactly how you eat your DNA. There is DNA in your foods. Different processes do affect the amount of DNA within your food. If you're cooking, especially like with meats and stuff like that, you can cook some of these things off. But if I'm not mistaken from what I've read thus far, some of that still maintains, and it's still within the foods that you eat. And it's the DNA within plants and the fact that they're often not processed in the same way that meat's DNA is, that actually makes them beneficial for the body. So let's dive into what DNA is, because I want to make sure you guys understand that before we keep going. So DNA is the chemical name for the molecule that carries genetic instructions in all living things. The DNA molecule consists of two strands that wind around one another to form a shape known as a double helix. Each strand has a backbone made of alternating sugar, deoxyribose, and phosphate groups. Attached to each sugar is one of four bases: adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. And the two strands held together by bonds between the bases. The sequence of the bases along the backbone serves as instructions for assembling protein and RNA molecules. So basically, this is just saying that DNA is the chemical makeup, or the chemical encoding codes for how the body actually operates. And the DNA within our body is going to be 99% the same in regards to the amount of DNA or the variation of DNAs within our cells. They're the exact same. And as a matter of fact, DNA within most people is also the same. That's why we grow to have 2 arms, 2 legs, and anything outside of that is not normal. RNA. Ribonucleic acid, or RNA, is one of the 3 major biological macromolecules that are essential for all known forms of life, along with DNA and proteins. So practically what RNA is the genetic copy of the chromosomes or the genes within DNA that is then transferred to the ribosomes of our cells, and which are then used in order to create different proteins. The kind of, hold on, let me make sure you guys. But here it goes in simple, to make sure I'm not being too wordy. All right, so DNA makes RNA, and RNA creates proteins. That's simple, like as simple as it gets in regards to how that process works. What your proteins are, this causes the workhouse of cells, and they play a leading role in the cells as enzymes, as structural components, and in cell signaling, just to name a few. So basically what this is saying is that the RNA makes the proteins that actually regulate how our body functions. And when you understand this, you begin to understand why the kind of DNA that you're eating really does matter. And if you're actually consuming enough of it within your diet in order for you to actually receive the benefits of it. Hold on, I can't find my little scrolly thingy. Here we go. Here. Uh-oh. When the cell needs to produce a certain protein, it activates a protein's gene, the portion of the DNA that codes for that protein, and produces multiple copies of that piece of DNA in the form of messenger RNA or mRNA. The multiple copies of mRNA are then used to translate the genetic code into protein through action of the cell's protein manufacturing machinery, the ribosomes. So that's just a longer explanation of what I just told you. The DNA copies itself into mRNA. The mRNA travels into our cells. Our ribosomes, in which is an aspect of our cells, and each cell scans that mRNA, and that actually tells that cell which kind of protein to make. Your genes. Your gene is just a stretch of that DNA that can change that information. So the body organizes the coding of these genes into chromosomes. And those chromosomes, or those different chromosomes, depending on where they are within the actual strand or the genetic makeup of the DNA, actually predicates, what coding that is. And so whenever we're talking about genes, it can be confusing because I've talked to some people that feel as if these are all different things. But when you were talking about the body, remember that we are going into things that are so microscopic, like even within the layers of the stomach. We're not talking about something that's super thick. We're talking about something that may be 1 centimeter wide or 2 centimeters wide, if that. And we're going into the deep levels of what actually lies within the layers of the stomach. Same thing when it comes to our cells. So genes are a part of your DNA. They're not something separate or anything of that nature. This is all basically saying that your genes are a part of that coding. And by changing your genes, you're changing the codec. You're changing how your body actually responds to certain things, creates certain hormones and certain proteins and things of that nature. And when we do that, we have the potential, or we have the opportunity to create disease. And a lot of us can't link the two. But this is why they call cancers. About 60, I want to say it's between 40 to 60% of cancers are actually called lifestyle disorders, meaning that you create the cancer due to the lifestyle that you live. It is not something that mystically happens just out of nowhere. And, we can't gauge where it came from. A lot of it comes from our personal habits. The genes that proteins make, some of them are, like I said, coding genes, and some of them do not code. But they all have the ability to be controlled and manipulated by the actual bacteria within our gut. And this is how. The gut actually controls which proteins are released. It controls, or the bacteria within the gut, I should say, controls how all of these proteins and things like that are released. As a matter of fact, your microbiota, or the bacteria within your gut, even controls your circadian rhythm. Did y'all know that? The circadian rhythm, again, is the clock, the biological clock that the body operates off of. So there are certain times to where different enzymes are a bit more active than others. The actual gene, the bacteria within the body controls the amount of histones and other components that controls which genes are actually activated and inactivated. I hope that makes sense. The bacteria within your gut is controlling which genes are being activated. And if we know anything about cancer, if we know anything about tumor, even obesity, Obesity happens, and some people, and it's so unfortunate because some people don't understand that, hey, Ash, I'm working out. I didn't change my diet. I still can't lose this fat. What's going on? It has a lot to do with the environment within the gut. Not understanding that if you don't have certain bacteria that produce the chemicals that actually, or that creates the proteins that actually stimulate tumor growth, or they increase the proteins that actually make obesity harder to get, there or harder to achieve. People that are typically slim are shown to have different sets of bacteria than people that are typically bigger and obese. So how we look, how we react, and how we respond, all of that stuff, we already know to be controlled by our genes. But to hear that the environment within our gut, in which our diet actually affects, also has an impact on these genes is important. You have to understand that the DNA that you consume becomes food for your cells. And I'm going to continue to break that down in a bit. Hopefully everything that I'm saying is making sense. If it is not, please say something and I will slow down and I will do my best to make sure you guys get this. Is everybody with me? Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Oh, that was the last good point. Hold on. Nope. 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 Who's the question? Go ahead and ask on this little thingy right here. I can't see the chat. Neither can I see if you guys raise your hands. And so just unmute yourself and ask whatever you need to.
Yeah, I have a question, and it's in regards to DNA and genes. So you were saying that cancer is something, it's almost like you create that yourself by what you have eaten, right? So is that the same as with alopecia? It can be reversed by dealing with the gut?
Absolutely. When you think about the actual growth of certain things, and we're going to get into that as well. So when the things that are responsible for the growth within our bodies, that also has a thing to do with the lack and or the presence of certain things within our gut, within the microbiota within our gut. And it's so awesome to finally see science validating this. You know, they still have their gray areas where they're saying there's not enough research. There's not enough research. But if you guys pay attention, I almost feel as if science refusal to acknowledge certain things really just reflect its infancy. If you understand what I'm saying, because our ancestors knew so much. They knew so much more. We had so much more information. If you actually look, you go back, I mean, there are some facts that stem from so far long ago, and you wonder, how did they know that? And then why is science just now validating these extremely old truths? But it is honestly one and the same. If you are not consuming enough of the agents necessary in order for the body to create these things, understand that the body breaks down all the nutrients that we consume into things that it can utilize, not just for energy, but for so much more. And when you are not consuming these amino acids, when you're not consuming these minerals, when you don't have these vitamins, when you have these deficiencies, it actually alters the way that the body starts to produce itself. And alopecia is definitely one of them. There's a multitude of ways that alopecia could come about. So understanding what's causing that specific case of alopecia is important, but it wouldn't be wise to ignore diet and the bacteria within the gut when addressing any of those, because again, and I will always stand firm on it. You cannot address any disorder or any disease without tackling the gut first. I don't care how slight it is, even asthma. There are different clinical studies that actually show that asthma is caused due to a lack of bacteria within the body. Same thing with Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's and other neurodegenerative disorders are actually associated with sometimes too much serotonin being produced within the body. And what confuses people is that people don't understand where these things come from. Although serotonin, dopamine, and things of that nature are neurotransmitters, they are not necessarily all created by the brain. 95% of the serotonin within the body is created within your gut. Again, 95% of the serotonin within your body is created within your gut. The body uses an amino acid called tryptophan in order to create the serotonin. And that tryptophan is derived from different shorter chain acids that actually come from within the diet. If you are not consuming these things, the body has a difficult time creating serotonin. Thus, we have things linked to different mental disorders, depression, moodiness, anger, someone that's easy to temper. All of this stuff can be directly associated with or correlated with the environment within the gut. Did I answer your question?
Oh, that and more. Thank you so much.
No problem. Okay.
Is it true that everybody have cancer cells, just a matter of when they're activated? Is that true?
Absolutely. It's the same. Thank you so much. Absolutely. So what happens is, listen, when you consume, let's just say you consume a lamb or whatever, right? And that lamb, when it breaks down into a chemical that actually causes the negative bacteria within the gut to multiply and to become over dominant, right? And then again, remember the first law of nature for everything is self-preservation. Everything wants to live. That's what makes suicide so unnatural, because it's not natural for a living thing not to want to live in accordance to, just the world that we live in, right? And so when you actually consume these things and you create this bad bacteria is fighting to exist just as the good bacteria would. Same thing with viruses. What happens with viruses? Viruses have to actually impact a host cell and then do what? Use the machinery within that host cell in order to replicate. If you can stop a virus from replicating, you actually stop the virus. And viruses have very tricky things that they do that we don't realize that they're doing just to survive. Whenever you get sick and you create a sneeze, people think that sneeze is just a consequence of the actual virus, not understanding that there's wisdom in everything and not respecting that there's wisdom in everything. So when that virus impacts your lungs or it infects the lungs, right? And it causes the lining of the lungs and everything to become irritated, and that excess mucus that is actually holding the bacteria starts to multiply, right? Resulting in pneumonia, resulting in COVID, or whatever the case may be, right? You have to actually spread the virus, spread the disease via like saliva or via the other consonants of the infected person. So you sneeze because that's that virus's way of replicating itself. The more that it can replicate, the stronger that it becomes, if that makes any sense. And so
It does.
you have to understand there's so much wisdom in everything that the body does, and that wisdom is often ignored by science, or it's mislabeled. So when the body understands that there's toxins and there's pathogens within the gut, within the body, and there's no way for it to get rid of it, it will heat itself up in order to try to get that virus out of the system. We look at that and we say, oh my God, I have a fever. Let me go and take some meds. Let me go and get something to stop this fever. Now understanding that when you do so, you're interrupting the body's process of healing itself, making healing and coming off of some of these disorders and diseases a lot harder to do. So understanding the wisdom within the body and just the many ways that the body really does fight for us, even when it doesn't feel like it. Same thing with inflammation. You get a cut, the wound inflames, okay? It swells up and stuff like that. That's the body's way of trying to actually trap in that bacteria to make sure it doesn't spread. But we look at that and we say, oh my God, that's an ugly scar. I don't like the way that looks, or it shouldn't be that way. Let me do something else in order to make sure it doesn't come out that way. There's wisdom in what the body is doing if we allow it to do it. But let's keep going. So these genes that we are consuming, right? They come in the form of almost like tools for our cells, okay? So we have the cells that our body naturally develops, breaks down and destroys from the cells that are no longer functioning. Sometimes our cells actually extracts and recycles those tools, implements them into newer cells. And then sometimes we take the tools that we're getting from dietary DNA and we apply it to our own. And we use those tools one and the same. Understand that the gut is very acidic. The cells die off very, very fast in the gut. I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, it's 2 to 3 days. Every 2 to 3 days, the lining within your gut has to be replenished by the body. And so you have to really make sure that you're consuming the things that helps the body do so whenever you're dealing with certain disorders, especially like acidic reflux, ulcers, and a multitude of other things. Without putting that stuff into your diet, without putting it into your body, it's really hard to get the body to do what it can do naturally. This again is explaining RNA, how it's replicated. RNA also plays an important role in regulating cellular process, from cell division, differentiation and growth, to cell aging and death. Defects in certain RNAs or the regulation of RNAs have been implicated in a number of important human diseases, including heart disease, some cancers, strokes, and many others. What is it saying? The change in our RNA is the cause for a lot of diseases. How and why? Those genes that you are actually consuming, or your genes, again, produce proteins that do a multitude of things. When our diet is high in, let's just say, genes that actually hinder and inhibit the expression of certain genes, we actually cause different conditions like cancer, and here's how. So within your diet, let's just say within a typical fruit and vegetable diet, is loaded with different, what they would call microRNAs, or different RNAs that actually float within the bloodstream and have the ability to change our chemical markers. These genes create proteins that bind to other proteins or other receptors that actually result in the hindrance of that gene from expressing. And so the genes that are typically responsible for regulating inflammation are actually hindered. Thus, when you eat things to hinder this gene, when you eat things that constantly hinder this gene, you have the ability to really inflammate the body, because the protein associated with regulating the gene that actually regulates inflammation within the body is cut off. So what you eat, Simone! This is a therapist that I wanted on here, guys. She's on here. Hey, Simone, how are you?
Good. It's amazing. I got connected.
Yes, I am so glad. Awesome. Okay. So let's keep going. So what you're eating has the ability to turn certain genes on and turn certain genes off. And what's controlling which genes are turned on and which genes are turned off? The bacteria within your gut and the mRNA, or the messenger RNA, in which you're receiving. And the mRNA within the foods that you're consuming, the DNA within the foods that you're consuming, have the ability to alter that. And so if you're eating things whose mRNA and or DNA genetic makeup does not supply the cell on a cellular level with beneficial bacterial and beneficial things, you have the potential to create a negative environment within the gut that actually controls the negative reactions that come as a result of that. It's literally that simple, but a lot of people are not hip to it. What does it say? The bacteria within our gut can control the genetic expression that occurs within cells. And that's, again, solely because the bacteria within our gut controls how our genes are actually expressed. Chemicals produced by certain good bacteria within the gut from the digestion of fruits and vegetables can affect genes in the cells of the gut lining. Gut bacteria likely influences the circadian rhythm of digestive cells by affecting histone production. Again, there are certain genes that, when expressed too much, they become a problem. Same thing, and that's exactly what happens with tumors. That's the exact same thing that happens with cancerous cells. These genes that actually create these conditions are being kept on. They're not being regulated. And that, again, directly associates with the environment within the gut. And if we have the right bacteria within our gut to properly regulate and control these things. I wanted to talk to you guys, and this is the last bit of this. Let me stop this share real quick. I wanted to talk to you guys about nucleotides. because nucleotides actually make up DNA and RNA. And this is the actual aspect of the DNA and RNA that you are consuming whenever you are eating anything. The nucleic acid is within each cell. Let me start here. In this book, I forget how much it was, but it's been a beauty, just great in helping me on a microbiology kind of level. So if anybody's ever interested in it, I'm trying to get the cover. Hold on, I want to make sure I don't lose my page. This is the book. Can y'all see that? Yeah? Okay. So if you guys ever want to learn more about this, how the body really works on a cellular level, and thus how to heal your body on a cellular level, books of this nature are a go-to because they really help us understand on a micro kind of level what's really going on, the different components within ourselves on a cellular level. And it is a bit much. This is definitely not something that you put a 30-minute hour study into and you grasp. It's been a daily kind of, not even a daily because I don't study it daily, but it's been a walk. It's definitely been a progress for myself, or a process for me to break this stuff down and understand it. But we're going to go to chapter 3, where it's talking about our DNA. So again, our DNA is made up of nucleotides, okay? These nucleotides is what we use every day, okay? It's needed for the basis of growth and development within our bodies. We have different amounts and forms of nucleotides at different stages within our life, of course, because we're developing in different stages of our life, or at different rates in different stages of our life, but they are super, super, super important. And again, these nucleotides are the exact thing that people are speaking of when they say that you're eating your DNA. You're eating the actual sugar that serves as the backbone for DNA, and it's actually the host or the embodiment of RNA. Here it says nucleotides are ubiquitous molecules with considerable structural diversity. There are 8 common varieties of nucleotides, each composed of nitrogen's bases linked to a sugar, which is at least one phosphate group. And it's also, phosphate group is also attached. And here they kind of really go down. I know y'all are not going to have no interest in this, but I wanted you guys to see the basis of our cells, the basis of DNA. They're really just talking about these things right here: adenine, guanine, cytosine, uracil, and thymine. These are the most famous bases, or the most common bases that actually structure and create DNA as we really know it. And these are the very things that you're consuming when you eat foods. So of course, where you're getting your actual source of energy and all of that stuff from really, really, really does matter, because it really does have the ability. Hold on. How was I turning this page? Oh, duh. It really does have the ability to control how our body functions. And if you're controlling how our body functions, and you actually have the ability to alter DNA by the DNA that you're consuming, y'all better start being mindful of what you eat. You need to start being mindful of what you're actually consuming and being honest about what you're consuming, because it's affecting us on a cellular level that a lot of us are not even we're not ready to talk about. We're not ready to acknowledge. But when you are sitting here and we're talking about healing, we're talking about resetting the body, we're talking about getting the body to a better state of being, you have to tackle the gut and everything that the gut is responsible for. You neglect the gut and you're actually avoiding healing, period. And this very thing actually extends so far. I mean, so far that if we really wanted to break it down, I'd probably have to have a lesson per day. And that's throughout the year, in order to really break down the role of bacteria and the different proteins that it creates, and the different effects that these proteins have on our body. Rice. Some people have no idea, why is rice so bad? What about rice is so negative? I don't get it. There's an actual agent within rice and they call it the DNA of rice. There's an agent within the DNA of rice that actually inhibits a protein that regulates cholesterol. So people that typically eat a heavy diet in rice have high cholesterol because the protein within the actual rice is attaching to the protein in the gene that actually regulates if or how much cholesterol flows within the body. And there's not just DNA within their gut, there's DNA within the blood as well. MicroRNA circulates throughout the blood. And the microRNA that circulates throughout the blood, when coming from fruit and vegetables, or the digestion of fruits and vegetables, and again, understand that it's the digestion of. The digestion of fruits and vegetables creates chemicals that serve beneficial for our bacteria, versus the digestion and the breakdown of meat that actually create different byproducts and acids and gas that do not serve as beneficial for our gut bacteria. So when we understand that, just by eating something that is high in a protein or has certain components within this RNA that we are consuming and that is then floating within our body and our DNA, that affects how our body actually marks itself. It affects the amount of proteins and the amount of antigens and antibodies that actually float within the body and actually stop high cholesterol, or actually removes the bad cholesterol, because there's good cholesterol and there's bad cholesterol. But when we do that, we just got to understand what we're eating. We have to understand what we're eating and how it actually affects the body. And know that every time that we are eating something, we are either feeding and or fighting the disease, a disorder. There's no in between. You are either feeding yourself something that's going to benefit you, or you're feeding yourself something that's going to harm you. It's one of the two. If you try to convince yourself that there's anything other than I love you, but you're lying. It's only one of the two. There's no in between. Where's that other page that I wanted to show?
Can you explain the reason why eggs are bad for you to eat?
Same thing, hormones. So when it comes to women, and then on top of that, it's linked to high cholesterol for one of the same things. So when you're talking about eating eggs, do we know what we're eating? Like anybody, give me your best explanation of what an egg is.
The chickens, period.
Okay. Anybody else? That's practically right. You're eating the release hormones. Understand that even within our body, it's hormones and bacteria that creates a fetus, right? There's these different components within the body that actually binds together to create a fetus, to aid in the process and the development of a fetus. And so when you're eating an egg, you're eating hormones, you're eating sugar, you're eating everything that chicken uses in order to develop its fetus. So when you talk about the human body and how what we eat actually affects it, understand that eating excess hormones can throw yours off too. It throws off the way the body regulates. It throws off the way that the body functions because of this excess. When you're not eating, I don't want to say natural things, but when you're not eating things that I would say are of the earth, contain the natural carbon that the body needs in order to function, you are bound to cause some type of irregulation within the body, period. And this is why going away from eggs, steering away from chicken, steering away from meat, even if it's just for the sake of healing. You have some people that'll say, I could never be alkaline. Okay, cool. Can you be alkaline for a year? Can you do it for 6 months while you're at least trying to heal and work on what you're doing? Can we at least start there? And by the time you get to the end of that 6 months, I guarantee you're not going to want to go back anyway. So can we at least start there? Even with this fast, fasting has a huge effect on the biome within the gut, again, because of the starvation of certain cells. Understand that some of your cravings are not coming from you. Some of your cravings and what you want and what you desire have nothing to do with self. They have everything to do with the bacteria within our gut and its needs for survival. And so if you have bad bacteria that is over dominant within the gut and it needs X, Y, and Z in order to survive, your cravings are going to gravitate towards that. And so when you are fasting and you are actually eliminating some of the things that the bad bacteria utilizes in order to stay healthy, in order to be dominant within the biome of the gut, you actually have the potential to completely eradicate the system of that actual bacteria. I think it was H. pylori. I always forget the name of that bacteria, but there was a certain bacteria that was actually studied during clinical trials where fasting actually completely eradicated this particular bacteria from the microbiome. And the beautiful thing about it is that once it was eradicated, it never came back, which actually speaks to how powerful fasting can really be, how it can actually reset the body by resetting the microbiome within the gut, giving the gut what it needs in order to create probiotic effects or beneficial bacteria within the gut to start bringing the body back to a homeostasis kind of regulation. I should have bookmarked it.
So how long does it take to actually fully reset your body? Like if you have diseases or health issues, how long, or is there not a timeline on it?
For a typical reset, to enhance immunity, to enhance your immune system and how that functions, that can occur within 3 days. And we're going to talk about how that fast actually gets you there. There's through fasting and water fasting alone, can you get to a stage called the autophagy stage. And the autophagy stage occurs when the body begins to eat away at itself. So the body begins to eat away at scar tissue, cells that are not functioning the way that they should, cells that should have already been dead or that are not dying off in the way that they should. The body actually eats away at that. Autophagy is a term for self-eating. So the body begins to eat away at the things that shouldn't be there, and actually starts to redevelop newer agents, newer cells that actually do function in the way that you need them to. So you can get there by hitting it's either 24 hours to 72 hours in regards to a watermark. And the reason for that big gap in that time frame, it depends on a person's health. So I could probably hit the autophagy stage in about 24 hours. While another person may have a harder time getting there because of their lifestyle or whatever the case may be. So typically you want to get to the 3-day mark of a water fast, and which is exactly what we're doing during this fast in order to provide the body with an opportunity to reset itself. Depending on the virus, disorder, or condition that you're working on, and just how your body is handling that particular virus, bacteria, condition, actually does predicate a lot in regards to how long it may take you in order to get rid of certain things. Some people have gotten rid of herpes in a year. Some people have gotten rid of herpes in 6 months, 3 to 6 months. Same thing in regards to chlamydia or any other STD and or disorder and condition you can think of. Everything has to do with just how our body is functioning at that time. And again, understand, if our DNA is what's controlling how our body responds to things, and there has been shifts in our DNA, and that happens a lot with a lot of meat eaters, and that's why a lot of people don't understand aging, and that's why aging is so different for a lot of vegans. You'll see some vegans that are 70 years old, and she look 50, 40, 30. She looks young versus someone else that may be eating a bit more of a dairy or kind of meat kind of diet. The mRNA, the DNA within these things actually promote aging. And again, when you think about aging, understand that the physical is just it's a reflection of the internal. And so if you're aging physically, you are also aging internally. And the actual death of some of these cells, healthier cells and things of that nature, is all synonymous with that. Somebody in trouble. Where am I going? I can't find this page that I wanted you guys to read. And I know I'm going on, I know it's 9 o'clock now, Netta just told me. What's this? No. Stop. Chances are I'll send it in an email just so you guys have it with you to really just look at. It's nothing more than me showing you guys exactly what I've been telling you about, but how DNA, the translation between DNA, how DNA is copied, how DNA is actually damaged and destroyed by the things that we eat, and again how that crippled DNA actually leads to a multitude of different disorders and diseases, unfortunately, that become really hard to tackle once you start affecting the way that the body responds to everything. Again, remember that your DNA is practically like chemical codex. They're the chemical codes that predicate how the body actually responds. And once that's altered in a negative way, it's really difficult to really get the body to go back. That's why holistic healing is so hard, and many people run from it because you're forced to do it the natural way. You're forced to do it in the way that you've actually caused the disease and disorder. So where you've spent 30 years with eating the wrong things that cause bacteria, with holistic healing, you actually have to put in that time by implementing the right habits in order to do all the damage that's been done. I hope that that made sense to everybody. I hope that it intrigued somebody enough to just go and say, is this true? And validate it for yourself so that you can be encouraged to be more mindful of what you're consuming. You can be encouraged to be more mindful of the different things that you're consuming and how negatively it can affect, or even positively that it can affect your body. And again, understanding what to me is one of the most important brains within our body. And to me, that's the gut. If what's within the gut can actually control the brain, then who's really in control? Can't be the brain to me. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't know if you can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I had a question going back to when you were talking about cancer, and I was wondering, I've been hearing that, is it true that soursop fruit is effective in killing various forms of cancer? And I'm wondering, I keep hearing some pros and cons. So I guess you have to be safe. I don't know what a safe amount to eat is, or an effective amount to eat is, and it's even hard to find the actual fruit. I've bought tea, but I'd kind of rather have the actual fruit. I don't even know where to find it.
Okay, when it comes to soursop, I've found it easier to get, like, if not online, out here, there's a place called Central Market. Central Market is a Texas thing. And so it may not be in other places, but they have different fruits like that. Seasonally, it's not always something available in stores. But there's different places that you can get soursop fruit from. Etsy, if you go to Etsy, different Etsy providers actually have the fruit and they'll ship it to you. Fruits and Roots is really good for that as well. They have a lot of different organic fruits that they make available for everyone. And then in regards to the aspect of its healing properties, hold on, let me see if I can file open recent. Let's see if this opens really quick. So what makes herbs so beneficial are the actual phytonutrients within the herbs that have these different abilities, these different aspects about them that the body recognizes a bit easier. Typically, your herbs, your fruits, and your vegetables have shorter chain fatty acids than the longer ones, and these shorter chain fatty acids are actually noted to have some of the best effects on our digestive tract, the GI tract. And I'm about to share this screen with you so you can see what I'm talking about. You may get it easier. So this is one of my slides on herbs. Let me go to the slide I can't see the whole thing. Okay, there we go. All right, so boom. These are the things that actually make herbs and fruits such as your soursop and things like that so beneficial. And it's the agents of these herbs that are actually responsible for suppressing certain genes. Again, these things have different proteins within them that actually stimulate certain genetic activity and suppress certain genetic activity. And typically, you have your plants, again, your plants, your fruits, and your vegetables that are responsible for some of the beneficial aspects of the genetic activity that these things have upon our body. So the different, what do you call them? Constituents, I can't say that word, but ingredients, like the different components of these herbs are known as your phenols, volatile oils, flavonoids, tannins, proanthocyanins, curcumins, saponins, and so forth, alkaloids, vitamins, minerals, so far and so on. These different things go into the body and they attack certain things, or they bind to certain things, actually helping the body with removing them, or they go in and they make certain things astringent. They're cleansing to where they're antimicrobial, they're antibacterial, they're antiviral, and that is all because of the different chemical makeup within that actual plant. So when people are saying that soursop helps with cancer, they're practically saying that there is an agent within that soursop that has been tested to be shown that, or tested and known that it actually suppresses the actual gene that promotes the development of these cancerous and tumorous cells. And which one that is, or the most, what do you call it, bioactive compound of these herbs, all of them can be researched. On our Instagram, I have a little game that I started. I'm not the most consistent with, but it basically, I try to teach you guys about these herbs so that you understand how they are beneficial. So you have different herbs that have different bioactive compounds that are responsible for its healing properties. And these herbs, some of them are well known and listed, and some of them are not. So some of them are still being argued with, or whatever, but that's essentially what that is. And when you think about how dope it is, like, y'all understand that a cell and what makes up a cell, the agents that actually make up that cell actually embodies that cell and really can't be changed into anything else unless the things that embody or make up that cell is eradicated, right? So when we talk about these phenols and these volatile oils and these flavonoids and these tannins, we're also talking about the very things that makes these things what they are. Take flavonoids, for example. Most flavonoids are responsible for the way that a herb looks, smells, if it's sour or if it's sweet, and the alteration of just one of these atoms, one of the atoms that actually make up these flavonoids or make up this fruit, this vegetable, whatever you're looking at, can alter everything. So something that was once sweet can now become sour. Something that was blue is now yellow. And that's just the change from one thing that we can see in plants. So imagine what happens to us, within us, when that happens. And a lot of that actually leads to some stuff like IBS. There are some, like, especially cancers within the stomach, when the cells lining the stomach change, meaning that instead of epithelial cells, they become another kind of cell. That's actually what predicates that cancer, because now the cells that naturally occur in that spot are no longer there. Thus, the function of the body is thrown off. So now we have cancer growing at a crazy rate. IBS that's tripping probably more than it ever has before. I want to say it's called interception, in which, if I'm not mistaken, that's the word, where the gut kind of starts to line, like it's almost like it dips into each other, causing excess pain and stomach blockages and stuff like that. All of that is caused by the differentiation in the actual cells that line that tissue. Did I answer the question?
Yes, you did. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
No problem. Anybody else got any questions?
Ivy, can you still continue to take vitamins on this fruit?
Huh?
Can you still continue to take vitamins on this fruit fast, or just
You said, can you take vitamins?
Yes. Can you continue to take vitamins or should you stop taking the vitamins?
Oh, can you take vitamins or should you stop taking vitamins? Okay, so vitamins depends on where they're coming from. So the body makes its own vitamins within itself. Not everything comes from our diet. So there are some things within our body the diet can, there are some things within our body that the body regulates on its own, including nucleotides. Again, it creates its own nucleotides. It regenerates nucleotides that are being salvaged from dead or dysfunctioning cells, as well as it does take in and absorb nucleotides from our diet. It's the same thing that happens with vitamins. Vitamins, I always opt for us to get them naturally, because the thing with vitamins on the shelf is you don't know where they got their vitamins from. And a lot of these vitamins are being chemically and laboratory made. And those vitamins do not have the same effect on the body as, as naturally occurring vitamins may. And it's the same thing with GMO foods that lack natural carbon. And that's the whole thing about an alkaline diet, foods that are high in the carbon that our body needs. Whenever we are talking about vitamins that we get from shelves and stores and stuff like that, if you actually research, some of these brands don't even have a high percentage of the vitamins that they're actually proposing that they do. Meaning that the capsules that you're consuming does not have what you think that you have, does not think what you think they have within them. And so if you want to make sure that you're getting your vitamins in, implement foods that actually have the vitamins that your body needs. Make sure you eat your rainbow, in essence. And it becomes a bit hard because we've gotten so comfortable. We don't know how many calories we're consuming on a day-to-day basis. We don't know how much vitamin A we got in today throughout our diet because we don't know enough to actually calculate it. But it requires for you to say, hey, if I eat a cup of beans today, how much and what is actually within these beans? What's actually within the fruit that I'm taking in? And so forth and so on, to make sure that you are actually consuming what you need. So it's a bit more work, but it's definitely more worth it. And to me, it's a lot more safe. Because again, not all, and I'm not going to attack all brands and say, and be on the extreme and say ain't nothing good in the store. But typically, a lot of these brands are scams. And people don't understand it, even in comparison to how the body actually breaks down certain things. And that's really unfortunate because people be out here consuming stuff left and right, not understanding their condition, not understanding their disorder and what they're actually doing to themselves. A lot of women are anemic. Is there anybody anemic here?
I was told,
You were told that you were anemic?
yeah, some years ago, but I haven't been tested no, within the past 4 or 5 years.
What kind of anemia did you have?
I don't remember, been so long ago. I used to stay cold a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's different kinds of anemia that we can tackle. But if you don't understand the kind of anemia that you have, you don't understand how to address it. And you can actually make yourself really, really sick by going out there and getting on these iron pills. Those that are just suffering from a lack of iron within their diet could benefit from adding extra iron into their diet. But those that are that suffer with sickle cell, or those that they suffer with like beta thalassemia, we're having blood disorders. The problem with that is that it's the shape of the blood. It's the actual sickling of the cell. When the cell sickles, there's a group of agents within a blood cell called hemes, and these hemes actually hold the iron that the body. How can I say it? It holds the iron and the oxygen that the body gets from the lungs and from the blood. And when you don't have these hemes within the blood cell, a typical like one blood cell like this, when these hemes are missing, the cell sickles and it comes out really in a really sharp or jagged shape that causes a lot of how can I say it? Just jammed cells within arteries and things of that nature because the blood does not flow due to its irregular shape. But those hemes that actually carry the oxygen and bind to the iron within the blood is what actually helps us with our iron intake. So if you do not have these hemes, it does not matter how much iron you actually ingest, your body does not produce the blood cells needed in order to carry all of that iron that you're putting into your system. And it results in people being sick because you're overloading yourself in a sense to where the body is not even benefiting from it, because the body cannot pick up the iron. It cannot pick up the oxygen that binds to the iron in order to regulate those levels, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. What's the benefit of an enema?
Enemas are really good in the sense to where they can help cleanse the lower tract of the intestines. So let me go to here. So you have the anus right here, right? Going
Yeah.
towards the bottom of the actual tract. When you take an enema, you're typically tackling this right here.
Okay.
The problems with enemas is that they don't go all the way through. And that's where colonics, as we were discussing the other day, could be beneficial if you need that kind of cleansing, because an enema is not going to get through the entire tract. But there's a lot of good enemas out there, though. Like, personally, I like quassia. Do I have quassia on here? Yep. This herb right here, it has a multitude of different effects, but one of them being that it actually eradicates different worms and parasites from the colon, and it'll be something that you can see. A lot of people that try this kind of get disgusted, but taken in a tea form, it actually just helps stimulate the digestive process, and so it makes digestion a bit easier. But whenever you actually make like a decoction of this overnight and you take it in the form of an enema, it has the ability to kill intestinal worms.
Where can I buy that from?
We have quassia available. It may not be on the site. We have such a huge following that we don't make everything that we have known, because we just can't keep up with the demand, to be completely honest with you. And so our herbs are on a private page that some have access to and some don't, but it's practically www.beasmartvegan.com. So our regular website /herbs. And you'll see a list of some of the herbs that we have. If there's something on there that you don't see, that you're interested in, just let us know. 9 times out of 10, I have it. It's just not on there, especially with some of our more expensive herbs like ginseng and really, yeah, different forms of ginseng, because ginseng can be like $90 for half a pound.
Yeah, because I just been doing plain water. I haven't been putting anything in my enema water.
Okay, and how's that been helping you?
It's been helping. I don't put anything in it, just warm water.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that, because all that you're doing is you're cleansing that aspect of the tract. And honestly, some of us, depending on how backed up we are, any cleansing can be beneficial. So that's really good. And adding that extra hydration in that area, because typically a lot of people experience constipation because they're dehydrated. There's not enough lubrication and moisture within that aspect of the colon in order for the feces to actually pass. So, just even regular water enemas could be beneficial. I could see that.
Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else before I get to the second half? Not even the second half, just mentioning, of course, of the emotional aspect of this before we hop off. No more questions going once, going twice. All right, we on to something different. Let me stop the screen share. Okay. And then I had that up somewhere. And here we are. Place. Cool. All right. Let me minimize this. I'll see what I'm doing. So today is day 3 of the mental aspect of the challenge. And it was about facing our attitude. How many of you would say that you have control over your attitude?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Sometimes,
Okay.
not 100%. Depends on the situation.
Depends on the situation.
Most of the time.
Okay. So I guess depending on the intensity of the feeling is what I guess makes us feel as if there are things, emotions or attitudes that we can control and attitudes that we cannot. Will we all say that that's relatively factual?
Yes, madam. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to tell y'all, there's this woman that came into my life. She's my stepmother. And when I say that she taught me a lesson about what what we can control and what we cannot. And one of the things that she actually blessed me with is that I'm in control of a lot more than what I think that I am. And what we are in control of, or what we do feel as if we're in control of, it reflects greatly just on where we are within our mental, emotional, and spiritual journey. When it comes to the different, and by no means is this absolute. Sometimes when people hear other people speak, they try to apply it directly to themselves, and it doesn't apply to them in that direct way. And so don't take this as, you should have taken your trauma better, because that is not by no means what I am saying. Often we cannot control the things that we go through, but we can control how we respond. And understanding how to better our control of how we respond is understanding self. And so there's a lot of us that have gone through just different traumatic experiences that have caused us to think, feel, believe what we believe. Y'all watch Red Table Talk?
Yes.
Sometimes.
Girl, I love me some Red Table Talk. Okay, so this episode, I forgot who was on it, but they were talking about the hate between the Asiatic and the Black community. And I was tuned in, right? Because I'm from Third Ward, where there's a corner store on each block. And I've had different experiences, both beautiful and both kind of rough, with the typical owners of those establishments, in which are Asian. And there was so much said in regards to that. But one of the beautiful things that I felt like they spoke on was how our perception is often taught, and how those taught perceptions are so embedded into our being that they go hidden, and it's really hard to even detect. And in order for us to change some of these things, we have to be aware of some of them. And it's the lack of awareness of some of these deep embedded, sometimes ugly things that actually is the reason why a lot of the behavior that we wish we could change actually, how can I say it, they progress in a sense. It's almost like with my stepfather. I used to think that he would change a little bit, but it's like the older he got, I don't know, he just became a stone in some of those ways, like just completely unmovable. You could not detach him from the way that he thinks, from the way that he sees disrespect, and a lot of those other little small things that actually come with our culture that has a big influence in how we navigate throughout the world. But these attitudes that we experience, or these attitudes that we have, are definitely changeable. We just have to be willing to sit in a space to actually alter and change them and actually acknowledge them. Because a lot of us have deep-rooted problems that we are not acknowledging. Just like apathy, that was one of my things. Very young, I learned to turn my emotions off, completely off, to where I am not feeling for whatever it is that I'm going through. And a part of that is wisdom, so I'm told from my therapist. A part of that is wisdom. Again, wisdom in the body, knowing that this experience affected me in such a way that it was best not to even process it, not to even acknowledge it, than to actually face it, especially considering that a lot of us experience trauma young. And when I say young, I mean young. I personally, I was sexually abused molested and all of that, like as a kid. And there are some thought patterns and things of that nature that I realized within myself that actually stemmed from that experience. And a lot of our attitude actually stems from a moment. And I think that if we all understood that, we probably operate a bit different. A lot of us we had our worlds completely changed from a second in time. There was that one thing that somebody said, or that one thing that somebody did, or that series of things that happened within a stage or a phase within our lives that affected us as an adult. And we're having to find healthy ways of getting around these problems. And I can't wait for Simone to get on here and speak on this, because it's always beautiful to me to hear this from people that actually studied it, that have actually helped other people around their trauma, actually helping people understand how their mental state actually affects the rest of their body. You know, a lot of us say that the mind is just a portal to the new world. It's a portal to the life that we actually want. But that same brain can be a prison. It can be the cages that actually locks us within just the most difficult and the worst aspects or stages of ourselves and prevents actual progression. One of the things that I think came out of one of my experiences is not being heard. In short, the kid that raped me, whenever I actually went to the police about it, I wasn't believed. I was told that something else happened, even though I know that I said no, even though I know that I asked for it to stop. And then other girls came up. And so it all of a sudden made me believable. When 2 or 3 other people are saying what you're saying, you know, all of a sudden you got to kind of question what your stance was whenever they address the first person. But out of that, I think I was in, and I genuinely remember this, I was in the police station, and I told the detective what happened. And the detective looked at me and said, "Are you sure that he didn't persuade you to have sex with him?" And at this time, I didn't even understand what sex really was. And it was at that moment to where I looked at that situation, and to myself, I said, it's probably best to be quiet. And this was me this is 6th grade, if I'm not mistaken, that I had rationalized that it was best for me not to communicate all of this, because I can see how it's being perceived and I can see how I'm being looked at. And that's just not the truth. And what do you do when you're a little 6th grader against grown adults trying to tell you what you experienced, how it really happened, whatever the case may be? Whenever I went to school, they separated us by schools, by districts. So I had to go to a completely different district, and he had to go to a completely different district in regards to where we were supposed to go to school at. They completely separated us. But everybody knew about this. And so whenever I went to a newer high school, the guy was a very popular guy. And that was one of the very reasons that I gravitated towards him. Just in short, I was being bullied at a new school. I don't know why the girls didn't like me. It was really just like she's the new chick, I guess. And I guess when other, kids can be mean. Kids see other pretty girls, whatever the case may be. Now you're a target just because you're pretty and whatever. And so I think in hindsight, I wanted to get cool with somebody that I felt could keep me safe. And I got cool with the wrong person. But he was a popular gang member and everything of that nature. And at that time, I don't even think I really understood what gangs were. Where I came from in Houston, although there were deaths and violence and stuff like that, it wasn't really heavy on gangs. It was in Dallas, and I didn't know that people in Dallas had a problem with people in Houston. I didn't understand. I just didn't understand the gangs. I didn't understand how they worked, or whatever the case may be. So I wasn't really hip to a lot of it. But I was thrown into that new environment. That went the way that it went. And after we separated, there was a lot of people that still, rocked with him. They still favored him, that had a problem with me. And out of that, I grew this really tough attitude, because I felt like in that situation, I learned that only I have my back, and I am as safe as I make myself to be. I started getting into more fights. I mean bringing weapons to school. My attitude was absolutely horrible. And again, that defensiveness was on 20 because I was so used to not being heard. And now I carry that into my adulthood, and I carry it unconsciously because I don't understand that this is where that behavior really came from. But I'm struggling in my marriage, and I'm like, why are these things happening? You know, what's going on? Because these things affect marriage, they affect your relationships. And when it comes to there was a point in time to where it came to our relationship to where we were both over like explaining and defending ourselves. And I just asked myself, what about me feels so frightened and so threatened that I feel the need to combat everything? Why is it that whenever someone says something, I feel something in here? What is my body responding to before I can even consciously understand what the hell is going on? And I came down to that experience for myself. When you have peace within yourself, love and strength within self, and you have the strength to hone that. And as a child, I didn't have that. You know, as a child, my validation came from my parents. My validation came from the adults around me. I knew that I was doing right, wrong by what these adults taught me. And so when that validation was missing from something that I was definite of what happened, girl, when I say it caused confusion, at one point, did I get raped? Did I say no? And then that translates into relationships. Ain't that what I said? You didn't say that. That confusion, that need to defend and fight, it all comes from my trauma that I had to face. And literally one of the things that I did was I wrote myself a letter. That same 9-year-old me, however old I was, I literally wrote to her saying that I appreciated her for her strength. I appreciated her for getting me through that moment and through that phase in my life. I totally love and thank her for fighting for me when nobody actually did. But it's time for you to sit down. That's not the energy that I need. And in order for me to release that anxiety, in order for me to release that defensiveness, I literally had to address where it came from. And that has a lot to do with what a lot of us need to do when it comes to facing our attitude. We have to face the things that actually cause us to think what we think, feel what we feel, believe what we believe, in order for us to actually create the change that we want to experience in our lives. So if you haven't, please do the facing our attitude aspect of it. Please remind yourself, again, you know, the essence of the truth is that you can't control your attitude. Even when it feels hard, you can't control your attitude. You can't control the way that you think. And again, remember some of the tools that you can utilize in order to make that happen. I personally use metacognitive thinking a lot because it takes me out of the loop. Sometimes when you're thinking about something, you start feeling in accordance to what you're thinking. And that can be a negative thing. But when you are more conscious of what you're actually thinking about, being that instead of saying I am hungry and allowing the feeling of being hungry to anger you, to impact your patience, really thinking about the fact that you were just thinking about how your body feels. It feels different. Instead of thinking about how you want to eat whatever you want to eat, knowing that you are thinking about doing something that will actually cause harm and or benefit the body is actually more beneficial for me. Meditating, if you don't know how to do it, say something, and we can definitely help you with doing that, because meditating actually helps center me and calms me enough to where I can face my attitude. Some of our attitudes is nasty, and we don't want to acknowledge them. You don't want to acknowledge that you're being petty. You don't want to acknowledge that you're being rude, that you're being mean. You don't want to call yourself out for being selfish. I'm not going to say we are narcissists, but I know everybody got narcissistic tendencies, and we avoid that like we trying to avoid it, getting hit by a train. But the rage, the manipulation, the victimization of self, the flipping of stories, all of this stuff that we do as people throughout our lives, It's a reflection of our attitude and our behavior. And understanding that you're in control of that should be empowering enough for you to change what you know you don't like about yourself. Because us continuously doing the things that we know is wrong is what actually builds those feelings of regret and the hate that we have for ourselves that actually allow us to continue to do the wrong things. So if you don't feel as if you are worthy, you don't feel as if you are a good person, you don't feel as if you're deserving, start tackling why you feel that way. And it should lead to a major shift in how you actually feel, how you think, and how you perceive the world around you. Anybody got any questions?
I have a question, but I just wanted to say something and acknowledge what you stated about talking to or writing to the child in you. My sister has a book she was publishing called Grace. It's on Amazon plug. But she had us all write to ourselves and write to that part of ourselves that age where we would have liked to have given ourselves some advice at that crucial moment that kind of changed our life. Same thing with me. I was molested. I held it in for years until I was molested as a small child. So until I was 16, and kind of behaving very badly. Same thing as you, did not know how to express myself, running the streets, promiscuous, etc. Oprah Winfrey had a show on it, and that's when I decided to tell my mom, because my mother was very aggressive, and I knew she would have had the person killed, and that was my fear. So I was also fearful to say something, also in the same way protecting the person. It caused me a lot of mental issues as a young teenager, and I just want to acknowledge you for sharing that, because that is so true. It helped me in my 40s to let that pain go. Talking to that small child is not your fault. Acknowledging what happened to me, and saying what I wanted to say, or somebody could have said to me as a child and just didn't, I guess, maybe know how, or see the signs, or feeling guilty because I didn't say anything, knowing I had a mother that would protect me, and I held it in, a lot of guilt. And acknowledging that, I realized I was so angry, and I was into my 40s. I was holding it in, lashing out at, in relationships and didn't know why. Fighting for my individual, being an individual, a young woman, fighting for myself still when it was no need to. So I appreciate you sharing that. So important. Thank you.
Thank you. No, and it's not a problem at all. Like when I say, I think we all have some stories that are so powerful that it would really help the next person. And I used to work with kids a lot. I worked with kids for a very long time. And it's through working with kids that I learned how to not only forgive myself, but also to have just love, mercy, and more compassion towards myself. Within my situation, I've always felt at blame. I was led to believe that it was my fault that I got into that situation, that happened to me. And as a result, I walked around with a deep sense of responsibility, a deep sense of just hate for self. When one of the worst things that could ever happen to you happens and you feel like you're the reason for it, I didn't have any work, like I didn't feel valuable. I became suicidal, and I mean young. I think after,
All that. I can
yeah,
agree with all that. Yes.
after,
Yes. And the not feeling valuable, key thing to say, and forgiving yourself, even in no matter if you're 60, 70, 80 years old, you still have to free yourself from that guilt and forgive yourself, because you will blame yourself.
absolutely, absolutely. And society won't help in regards to addiction. You would think that somebody that's 11, 12 years old, that they would have heard that, sweetie, that's not your fault. To this very day, as a grown woman, all of you are women on here, the majority of you are women on here. If you invite a gentleman over to your space and things get intimate, and then all of a sudden your mind changes and you say no, and he continues even after you say no, is that rape?
Yes, because you said no, you don't consent. When you don't consent to something, it is.
why was a 10-year-old led to believe that despite me saying no, I caused X, Y, and Z? And I don't think people really realize when I say anger, y'all, I have as bubbly as I am, I'm just extreme on the other end. I've learned to manage that temper. I've learned
Mm-hmm.
to keep that tucked away until I feel as if it's necessary to bring her out. I've learned to free myself from her. But when I say it was on 13, it was on 13. You could look at me wrong, and I'm ready to get out there with you. I was that angry. When I was younger, I started realizing that it was almost as if physical pain helped with emotional pain for me.
Yeah.
And so I'm punching trees. I mean, bark is coming off the trees. My
Mm.
knuckles are bleeding. I'm starting to think that life is not worth living. It's easier to deal with the physical pain than it is the emotional for me.
Yes.
And I transformed into something that, in hindsight, I feel so bad for. But helping these kids, working with these kids that went through one and the same, and working with kids that even have made mistakes, like the teen that offended me, it taught me so much in regards to forgiveness. And even after working with those kids, it made me realize that the reason that I can give empathy and compassion to this baby that went through the same thing that I went through and not myself is my attitude and my personality. I feel as if I am personally unforgivable, even though I went through the same thing that I deemed somebody else forgivable for. And again, that has a lot to do with facing our attitude, facing the ugly aspects of ourselves, especially when that ugly aspect of ourselves is targeting us. Like, it's easy when we say, oh, girl, you this and girl, you that. But saying that to yourself, it rages a whole little war on
Mm-hmm.
the inside.
And that's what it did for me, because after I turned 16 and I released it and started trying to fight through that battle, I got lupus. I was diagnosed with lupus. And when I found out what lupus was, it kind of let me know, oh, well, they were telling me we don't know what causes it. We don't know what, this, that, and the other. And I had to do my own research. That's how I'm ending up with you today, still doing my research and healing myself and trying to help others heal, and teach yourself that it's mind over matter. It's food over everything. Use your food for your medicine. You can heal yourself. I became extremely sick, didn't know what to do, where to go. And I found one small little book, and back in the day in the 80s, they would have these little bitty books for like $1 that would have all this little information, and picked it up in the hour I was reading. And it explained how when you put your mind under a constant stress, you release all these free radicals that just start attacking. If your body is signaling, screaming all the time inside, you're under constant stress, you're overworking your body, you make yourself sick. And water heals. So I'm here today because of that. And like I said, I told you, I appreciate you sharing, because I can really relate to that. And a lot of us as women, we don't want to acknowledge what happened to us, holding on to that guilt, that fear that somebody will judge you like it's your fault. And once you learn to forgive yourself, you can say it like it's no problem.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. 300%. I see you, Simone, mindful self compassion to learn to treat yourself better. If there's anything you want to say, like, you're the professional on it, please feel free to speak before we hop off of here.
Didn't want to interrupt what was going on right now, because at that time it was impactful to talk about what y'all were talking about. However, um, you hit right on the dime when you said not being able to treat yourself better. So there's a specific program you can get workbooks on Amazon specifically called For Mindful Self-Compassion. And what it is that we always have the ability to give. We give to our friends, we give to our family members, we give to our partners, we give to our animals, but then we have nothing left for ourselves. So when you're thinking about the fact that a friend can call you at a dime and say, hey, going through the situation, and you will listen, you will stop what you're doing. It could be your child, and you give them sound advice. And no matter what the issue is, you're willing to just be there and listen to everything out and then give your opinion, advice, or help them out in some way, shape, or form. Why is it we do that for everyone else, but not yourself?
All right.
So what this talks about is being okay with the fact that sometimes we're just not okay. Like really accepting the fact that we're not, it's not always going to be sunshine and roses and rainbows. And some days are going to be bad days. And to really focus on yourself, to learn that I can give that same compassion. I can give that same understanding. I can give that same friendship to myself. Like truly going in the mirror. I have a mirror in my office, and a lot of my patients don't like looking at it. They'll actually scoot over so that they're not in front of it because they don't want to look at themselves in the eye. They don't like the person they are, so they can't have that conversation. So slowly learning how to be a better friend to yourself. If you were to hear the same scenario, but take yourself out of it and imagine your friend came over and told you that same scenario, what would you say? How would you react? What would your nonverbals be? Like even how we listen to each other, like intently, you stop what you're doing and you really focusing on them versus what you tell yourself in the minute of something going on, like you should do better, like suck it up, let's go, let's just do the thing. Our verbiage to ourselves is so different. So when we take that moment in that second just to remove yourself out of the situation and start to actually show yourself the same respect you give to everyone else, you are then able to address these things that have impacted you in life. So if you're looking for something, an activity or some way to start addressing things, and you're not currently, let's say, talking to somebody, because I know some people feel some sort of way about mental health services. So we're not going to talk about that right now. However, it's a great way to start investing in yourself because you control the peace that you can bring. And it all starts with you. So it's always important to protect your inner peace first.
Hmm.
Nobody has control over that unless you give it to them. And you can take it back at a wills. So this will allow you to do that.
Thank you so much for sharing that because again, we need all the tips, tools, and techniques that we can in order to get on a better state within ourselves. Aside from writing to my younger self in regards to trying to overcome certain traumas, meditation is key for me. The same way that people praise God, in my belief, God is within self, and so I praise myself. Not to the point to where I'm idolizing myself, but to the point to where I'm showing gratitude and I'm acknowledging all the phenomenal actions and behavior of every version of myself that led me to here. And a lot of us don't feel that way. We walk around feeling lonely and as if nobody has ever had our backs. But you've had you every step of the way. You have had you to the point, so much so to the point that you've prepared for the next day. It's been the youngest versions of ourselves preparing and embodying us for our future. And that's something that I think needs to be praised and applauded. So for all of my ignorance that led to wisdom, for every good decision that led to something beneficial happening in my life, for every bad decision that led to a lesson and wisdom that I've earned from that, I actually appreciate myself for. And I allow that appreciation to kind of spread throughout my body, almost like a ray of sunlight. If you can imagine how the sun's light warms you almost kind of gradually in a sense when you kind of just sit in it and pay attention to it, I allow the joy that I feel from the acknowledgement and the praise of myself to self to run throughout my body and elevate my consciousness, elevate my aura, elevate the energy that I'm operating on so that I can be closer to self, because soul, that God-like aspect of you knows all of you and it loves you sincerely. It's the same thing that you would hear in regards to Christian rhetoric or Nation of Islam and even Buddhism and so much and so further on, the hate that we experience is totally a personality kind of thing. It's a total attitude kind of thing. What we focus on is what actually manifests. And so focusing on the good in life and the good in ourselves and forgiving ourselves for the mistakes that we made, and even acknowledging that those mistakes are the reason for our success, is a huge part in winning that negative thought cycle that a lot of us go through. A lot of us don't even understand how negative we are in thought. Some of us are so negative in thought that it don't matter how much good is going on around you, your mind is naturally going to gravitate towards something to be scared of, something to be thoughtful of, something to be cautious of. You can't get out of this cycle of fear, of fight and flight, because of the moments within your life that you're actually stuck within. So yes, 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 yes. That is so awesome. I'm so glad that we discussed that. Again, so face your attitude, guys. If there's ever anybody that you ever did wrong, just say, yeah, all right. You know what I'm saying? You got me on that one. I was a bit selfish there. Hey, yeah, you right. You know what? I didn't even consider your struggle. I was a bit judgmental there. And I think that it would honestly free us to a degree to where we can stop being judgmental. We can stop criticizing ourselves. Again, the same critical eye that we place on other people is the same critical eye that is lit and on 10 whenever it comes to ourselves. And it's that same critical eye, the anxiety that we place on other people when we try to put these people in boxes and categorize their being into good, bad, whatever the case may be, that is putting us into the hell that a lot of us are going through mentally throughout our lives. And again, your mental health is equivalent to the overall health of your body. It's very difficult to have a healthy body when you don't have a healthy mind. Your body actually responds to your mind, and that's without you ever thinking that you're doing anything. If you actually think of something that scares you, your heart kind of starts beating a bit harder, doesn't it? If you think of something that makes you scared or makes you nervous, your palms can start sweating. You get defensive and you want to be angry. You want to be combative. These are all things coming from the mind. And when you are not operating your mind and your mind is just functioning on its own, bruh, like we are ugly, spiritually ugly. Can you name the book on? Simone, can you drop the link for, or not Simone, it was somebody with the,
Yeah, I'll drop it. I'll put
Okay.
it in. I'll put it in for you.
Thank you. And then we'll leave this here where it is, because I know we're going on 2 hours, Lord. Anybody have any questions, concerns, or anything of that nature that y'all want to bring up? Going once. Going
I
to.
do. I have a, I just like to ask everyone, how's everyone doing with the fast? Because I know I was having a little difficulty today. I had to lick a chip. So it got a little rough for me today. So just wondering, how's everybody else doing?
Well, for me, I kind of just got the $25 deal because I found out at the last minute and I just wanted to jump in, and I even jumped in on day 2. So I didn't get the opportunity to get the full package. And plus I'm actually about to fly out to see my brother, and I know that he's gonna eat some things that I know I shouldn't be eating. So as far as getting myself together, I figured I'd wait until I came back, and I'll do this whole program all over again, because I'm actually dying to do the real program, but I wanted to at least get the information. I'll be totally prepared when I come back to jump in the next time this program comes back on board.
Awesome. Awesome. And it's okay you had to lick a chip. Sometimes you got to do that. No lie, y'all. I think it was one time I had sniffed some bread. I just had to, I had to smell something whole, to
Yeah.
kind of make me feel a little bit better. But I'm so glad that you didn't necessarily give in. It take more strength to lick a chip and not eat the chip than
Yes.
than to stay away from the chip. So
Yeah.
that's
Well,
awesome.
I'm going to make, when I come back, my whole thing now is my motto now is be stronger than my excuses. So when I come back, I'm just going to have a no excuses campaign. I'm going to jump right in, because this is definitely what I want for
Awesome.
myself. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. And I see you, Helen. You said all is well with the fast. A portion of the smoothie is a lot for me than you would normally drink. And you have a jar in the fridge. Awesome. Everybody's portions is different. Sometimes I'm horrible with the smoothies. Like sometimes I actually do more fruits than I actually do the smoothie within itself. And so, it's totally understandable. Again, do not take any mistake here as you would probably take any mistake, and it being that you are not worth it, that you didn't do it right, so that you got to give up. All right. So even in the event that you do fall back and you say, girl, yeah, I had to eat me some of this. I was having a hard time. Get back on it. And understand that often it's those failures that actually lead to success. We have a sister, Netta's sister. She's pregnant with her 6th baby, and this baby is giving her the blues. And it's totally towards milk and dairy. She spent her whole life eating milk and meat, and now anytime she has even a little bit of it, she is throwing her life up. And, and it's a bit funny to me, but she knows now that that is really bothering her and causing the nausea and causing her to vomit. And she wouldn't have understood that unless she actually fell off and said, you know what, girl, after I had a good diet or whatever, I went and I ate a little piece of a hamburger, and she said she was throwing up all over the windshield. And so it's sometimes it's those mistakes that actually lead to the self-actualization and the realization that we need in order to get us to being successful. So do not take those mistakes as means of you quitting or anything like that. All right, we just keep going after we make whatever mistake, and we keep building.
Is the CMOS capsules good for this challenge too, or it has to be the gel?
No, absolutely. The CMOS capsules are really good for this. And to be honest with you, the CMOS capsules can be a bit stronger than the gel that you're actually consuming. And depending on your, the state of your condition, the state of your health, that can be a good and or a bad thing. But they do the same thing that the gel does. Sometimes it's just a bit more concentrated because it's in a powdered form. And so it makes it a bit more stronger. Typically, if someone has hyperthyroidism and they take CMOS gel, depending on the amount that they take, they'll be fine. But if you take it in capsules, it'll actually enhance or increase their adverse effects to where, they're experiencing things that they don't want because of the concentration of things that's in there. But you can definitely take them.
And are we able to eat like the walnuts and stuff with this, or just the fruit?
You can definitely do the walnuts and things like that with it. Walnuts, seeds and nuts are typically okay, or I would say seeds more than nuts sometimes are more okay to combine with fruit. I always advise for you to make your own milk and stuff like that, and that's the base of the milk for these challenges. So hemp seeds and nuts and stuff like that is cool to add along to whatever you're trying to consume throughout the day. Anybody else? That's it? All right. Well, I am so sorry for taking up 2 hours of y'all time. I know it's late, where some of you are. One day, it always goes quicker, like, and smoother, because Netta keeps me on the time when Netta's here. But one day I'm gonna get this down to where all this information, I'm gonna put it into an hour, and I'm gonna be like, boom, bam, thank you, ma'am. Y'all go ahead and do what y'all need to do, whoop, whoop, kind of thing. But until then, I always enjoy talking with you all. Hopefully you got some information today that holds you to your journey, makes you more. Is rice a man-made food? It depends on the term man-made. It depends on where you're coming from with that. I was just having a conversation with somebody about that too. A lot of the stuff that people are calling man-made, they're actually referring to as hybrid. And they call it man-made because these things cross-processed as a result of human intervention, rather it naturally occurring within nature. So in that sense, yes, rice is a man-made food. And not only that, a lot of rices are fake, plastic. I want y'all to understand that Asiatics, everybody got geniusness within the culture, but them Asians, they give you a run for your money. They have a lot of different ways in stimulating the false production of quite a few different foods. And even sea moss being one of them. One of the main reasons that I do not get sea moss, we do not get sea moss from overseas. And guys, we have so many vendors from Asia, the Philippines, and all of that, contacting us on a day-to-day basis saying, hey, we have CMOS too. It's almost like they're too smart for their own good, to the point to where they learn to replicate some of these things, and you can't even tell that it's been replicated. Like, you don't know that you're eating plastic. You can't differentiate the plastic from the actual grain of the rice. It's crazy. It's even some herbs, due to the cleanliness of some places, you have to stay away from their herbs, because a lot of their herbs can actually be contaminated as well. And so, just being mindful of that. Most of your rice and stuff like that, they do come from those areas, and for those reasons alone, I don't trust them. On top of the arsenic acid and all the other stuff that's actually within rice that's not beneficial for the body. Again, going back to what we discussed today, different mice that were fed an actual rice diet developed really, really high bad cholesterol, because the mRNA, the agent within the rice that actually binded with the protein within the body that expressed the gene, or helped express the gene that actually regulates our cholesterol within our body, was suppressed. So understand that when you eat those certain things, they really do have the ability to really hurt you. And rice is definitely one of them. The only rice that you really should be consuming is honestly not even rice. It's called wild rice, or some people like kamut. And just different things of that nature, different grains and stuff like that, because that rice ain't where it's at.
Is quinoa okay?
Yes, quinoa is good.
Okay.
You should be drinking your herbal teas during this challenge. Again, the first 7 days is all fruit, and you want to get the body to having a actual bowel movement. That's what a lot of this is all about: cleaning the intestines, right? Getting our body into the state to where we can actually start detoxifying ourselves without sickening ourselves because of the different toxins and stuff like that circulating within blood and stuff like that. And so consume your herbs that actually help you have a bowel movement. You've been provided with Cascara Sagrada. You've been provided with Cenopods. Both will actually help you get you going. So take one of them. Anybody else? That's it? All right, y'all. I cannot wait. Yes, Cascara is of the devil, boo. It is. That came straight from Satan himself. I think Satan planted it. Me personally, he had to come down here with a little kettle of water and put that in there, and he watered it until it grew like that. And that's why it tastes like that. Is my exact scientific understanding of why that herb tastes the way it do. Never again. Hopefully you had a good bowel movement. Did you drink all of it, Tamesia? She's with Netta. Hopefully you drank all of it and it helped you. You didn't have a bowel movement, or you didn't drink all of it?
Oh no, I did not drink it all. No. I tried.
Hey, I guess the effort counts. Go ahead and try them Cenopods, okay?
I drank some gulps, and then I was like, okay, I almost got like homegirl with the chip. I almost stuck a chip in my mouth. I was like, I can't. Something's got to give. Yeah, something had to give. That was too much.
I totally understand. I totally understand. And again, it's not much that gets rid of that bitter taste. But that bitterness, again, is the very reason as to why it's really good for the digestive tract, just like any other bitter really is. And so, at some point we have to get to a point to where it's not about the taste and how it makes us feel necessarily. It's about what we know is best for us. And when I say that Cascara is a cleanser, that Cascara will probably cleanse the intestines of your spirit, if the spirit had it. Everything gonna be clean. Good night, and thank you for staying with us for so long, and I'm sorry for taking so long once again. I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys get to sleep, because it being 11, I know it's late, but I appreciate you guys, love you guys always, and we will talk to y'all tomorrow.
Thank you.
Peace. No problem at all.
Good night. Thank you for sharing.
Good night.
Good night.